Lots, this is Brandy and welcome back to Astro Tarot Research or Astrology Research, depending on which channel you are watching this on. So I wanted to come on today and talk about the new moon that just occurred in Shatabhisha. I'm actually filming the day of the new moon, so you guys will see this video the day after, but it doesn't matter because we will see the effects of the new moon just for a little bit until we get to that full moon again. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the effects of what's happening with this new moon in Shatabhisha. I'm also going to talk to you about Rahu's transit into Ashvini, which should be occurring on the 21st. Granted, depending on where you are in the world, it could be occurring today. So just depends on where you are in the world. So when we talk about new moons, we are always talking about new beginnings, new starts, doing something a little bit different. And it doesn't have to be so extreme, though it can be very extreme. A lot of times people have charts that are heavily sensitive to the moon's influence. I personally don't have a chart like that, but I do know people who do have charts like that. You know what's so interesting about this new moon in Shatabhisha? It actually occurred around 2 a.m. my time. And normally I'm actually in bed by this hour, like 2 a.m. I'm usually not staying up. I'm not doing anything, though occasionally I might be scrolling through my phone. So I work from home, and on this particular evening, I decided to actually get started on my work early. And I never do this. I never start working at like 2 a.m. But for some reason today, I was like, I gotta just start working. I just got this feeling where I was like, I really want to just get to work. And the whole reason that I was even up this late is because I was trying to finish doing my hair, which you can see is sort of coming along here. I've already started putting like curls in, and then I still have like a piece in the back I need to add more hair to, but it's coming along. I'm almost done. So the reason I was up, I was doing my hair. I got the feeling, I was like, I can't go to bed. I can't sleep. I had 2 cups of coffee. Let me just get to work. And I thought, wow, this is really strange. I never work at this hour. What's going on? So I look at my phone and I'm trying to look up like events going on, and I see that there is a new moon in Shatabhisha. And I was like, oh, how fitting. Because Shatabhisha is one of those placements that is known to be one of these workaholic types energies. And I believe it's because it occurs in the sign of Aquarius, which is ruled by Saturn. And whenever we get nakshatras in houses and signs that are ruled by Saturn, they can carry a lot of Saturnian energy. A great example of this little workaholic type energy that you can see is this Korean drama that I watch, and it's like, What's Up with Secretary Kim. In the drama, the main actress, Secretary Kim, plays this secretary, obviously, who is very particular. She is very good at her job. She is an absolute perfectionist. She's a workaholic. She tries to get everything done to the pleasures or perfections or desires of her boss. She's like A1. It's like Devil's Wears Prada assistant. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to be on top of your A game. And I've seen quite a few Shatabhisha people have this sort of intense focus or need to be perfectionists in their work, or have a lot of anxiety surrounding not even just work. It could be things in their daily life, but work is a pretty common thing that people feel a sense of anxiety over. They will work incredibly long hours. I've seen some Shatabhisha people be truck drivers, and obviously truck drivers work some very, very long hours. So it was interesting to me that I fell right into the energy of Shatabhisha without even knowing it. That I automatically took on this worker bee mode, trying to get my work done extremely early, be very diligent, and have everything just easy breezy and ready for me to sit back and have my feet up at the end of the day so I could get things done early, right? With this new moon, what you can expect from your life is that you may find yourself very dutifully bound in some way. Maybe there's an area of life that you want to put a lot of extreme focus in, that you want to pour a lot more energy into, because you know in the long run that this will pay out. If we go back to the example of the show, you know, what's wrong with Secretary Kim, or what's going on with Secretary Kim, the reason she put so much time and effort into what she did is so that she can get her money and get out and retire and go and basically see the world and do whatever she needed to do, okay? And that was the same energy I had. I wanted to get my money and get out. I did not want to be dragging my feet in the morning. I wanted to get my work done. I just wanted to have things completed. I didn't want to waste any time. So you may feel like this intense need to not want to waste time. If there's some tasks that you have been putting off, like let's say you wanted to clean your garage, you wanted to clean your attic, you wanted to reorganize your closet, you wanted to give some clothes away, you know, some sort of task that you have been pushing off. This new moon is going to say, let's tackle that right now. Let's get this done. Let's stop dragging our feet and let's be motivated to get things done. This is a very motivational new moon. Now, Shatabhisha does have a lot of varying themes, like so many that I wouldn't be able to even begin. You know, Shatabhisha deals with having some sort of like awareness of past lives and being here before. I've just seen that theme a lot with Shatabhisha, just having this awareness like, oh, this is familiar, this is deja vu, this is, I know this isn't different, I've had this feeling before, I know this person, I had this life, like I've just seen that with Shatabhisha. They have themes along the lines of obviously creativity. That's something very Shatabhisha, being creative, being imaginative, being very illusionary. I've seen a lot of Shatabhisha be just very, very funny people. That's a common trait that you will see with Shatabhisha people, or even Rahuvian people in general. Because they have such a critical eye, they're going to look at small things and they're going to point them out and say something, okay? And be very silly about it, or be sometimes very obnoxious, sometimes like very overly expressive, like very Rahuvian, like very like over the top, like just like, so it's kind of hard to ignore the interactions that you're having with somebody Rahuvian. They're usually not going to be monotone, and they're not going to have this sense of too laid back energy, unless they're like really older. Like unless they're a lot older, then Rahuvian people, they get a little bit more real, and they're just like, yeah, I'm not putting that much energy into things anymore. So things along the lines of that. Shatabhisha, I've seen that deal with themes of motorcycles, but the overall arching theme that I have seen with Shatabhisha has to do with love and acceptance, and having this feeling or desire to want to express yourself in a way that may be very unusual or particular, but you feel like you can't do it because you know that you will be judged by the masses. And I think this is one of the reasons that Shatabhisha is kind of known as a circle. I think I've talked about this before, where they may have an interest or a particular hobby or a way of doing things, or etc., that's very unusual, and they know that won't be accepted. It doesn't necessarily have to be like wrong. It could just be strange. Like, for example, the same actress who was in, I think, What's Wrong or What's Up with Secretary Kim, she played a different role as, I believe, a museum director, and the museum director was supposed to be an older woman, but she was an older woman who was like a fangirl. You know how you have like fangirls of like Harry Styles and like, you know, boy bands or, you know, etc., things like that. She was like that, but she was an older woman, and that's quite unusual. Or would be something along the lines of like being like a older woman who collects dolls, like something along the lines, like it's not illegal, it's just a bit strange. And so you have Shatabhisha people who do things that are just a little bit strange. Another example, I think I've given this one before, is like Tina Marie. She was a white woman, but she liked to play music that was stereotypically known to be black. So she had to find that acceptance within a community that she wasn't technically a part of, like just by being born, you know, but that's the music she liked, and so that's the music she played, right? And that's the music she sang. It's certain things like that. Just kind of finding acceptance in an area that's a bit strange or unusual. So that becomes a major theme. It can get that deep for the new moon if it needs to, or things can be on the other end of the spectrum, like with me, when it's just all about the work. It's not really to do with, will people accept me for, you know, my green or red hair? I don't care. But for me, it was all about just being motivated to do things and having that sense of ambition. Okay. So one of those things could be a theme. Maybe you want to feel a little bit more accepted. Maybe you want to reach out. There's possible themes of strong loneliness. You could feel particularly lonely in the next coming up weeks. I'm not saying that sentence right. But you know, the next week's coming up, you could feel particularly lonely and quite sad. And that's just part of the Shatabhisha theme too. Having that sort of loner energy, feeling lonely in a crowded room, something along the lines of that. Now let's talk about Ashvini. So Rahu is transiting into the sign of Ashvini. It has been in the sign of Barney since July. Now, depending on what system you use, whether you're using the Rahu True Node or the Rahu Mean, then it's either already in Ashvini now, or it will be in the sign of, it's not sign, the nakshatra of Ashvini on the 21st. It all depends on systems, right? Things that have currently happened, the major big events, because I like to go to the vibe that everyone was on. And one thing to help know the vibe is kind of look at Google search to see what the people were searching for during this time. And the most popular searches during Rahu and Barney was the $2 billion lottery winning, Queen Elizabeth passing, Hurricane Ian, and the monkeypox outbreak. So we have money giveaways. We have the start of a new era when it comes to, you know, royalty in England. And we have a major natural disaster. There's always kind of major natural disasters, but, you know, that's something that's very important. Obviously, all disasters are important. And then the monkeypox outbreak. So we have some disease going on. And so those would be the major themes of Barney, kind of giving away money, starting new sort of dynasty legacies. I'm going to have to like get more into that with Barney. And then monkeypox, definitely Venusian placements I've seen deal a lot with diseases, but I don't want to really get into that at the moment. Now with Ashvini coming up, if you've seen my Ashvini video, then you know all of the different themes and variations that go on with Ashvini, but we can have a little recap. And to recap, let's give you my recap. So Ashvini deals with isolation. It deals with individuality, dealing with having a particular skill set or hobby, similar to the Rahuvian placements, like I just mentioned with Shatabhisha, having an interest that is not really that accepted. That's why, you know, Ketu and Rahu always travel with each other, and they're kind of like each other's counterparts because they're different and then they're exactly the same. Another thing that we will have when it comes to Ashvini is we have more impulsiveness. We also have a lot more passion and a lot more instinct, okay? So one thing that I've seen a lot with a lot of K2 rule placements, like if we're talking about instinct, we're talking about love at first sight. I would say when I was looking up a while ago, love at first sight, K2 placements were probably one of the #1 placements when it comes to having that like instant attraction, instant love, etc. at first sight. That is what it's about when it comes to, especially Ashvini. It is about instinct and just kind of going with your natural human urges. You know, you're mad, you want to throw something, or you want to hit something, or etc. like that. Versus when we get to the Venusian placements, which are a little bit more controlled. And et cetera, you know, it goes on and so forth. And then lastly, when it comes to Ashvini, it does have to do with rejecting societal values. I have seen various different Ashvini people as I mentioned several times, have like age gap relationships. They may, let's say they might live at home with their parents till they're like 40. They could just, depending on your culture, it depends, because like, let's say, okay, in American culture, most people encourage their children to move out as soon as possible. And another culture may be different, but K2 people in their own, like in American culture that I have observed and that I have seen, because sometimes I talk about different cultures, so I need to clarify. In American culture, I've seen K2 people go against that moving out early thing, and they will stay with their family for quite some time. I've also seen K2 people be very fiercely loyal to their family. Like their family is like their hut. Like, you know what I mean? Like they may not be loyal to anyone but their family. Somebody like Donald Trump would be a good example. Like he doesn't really look out for anyone. And maybe to some degree, maybe not even his family, but if he does look out for someone else, then it is his family. They're pretty much the only one he does make any effort to protect. And I've seen that theme a lot with K2 people. They only protect their own. Not only, but usually, for the most part, that I've seen. Not always, but I've seen it consistently, so I have to mention it. So that could be possibly a theme, having something to do with like loyalty or tribes. Like whoever your tribe is, that may become a theme for this transit. I could go on and on, but let's move on from, general themes of Ashvini. And then obviously we have things like the lack of emotional regulation that can happen with Ashvini. And then you can do the stereotypical things like being fit, but I haven't particularly seen Ashvini people be particularly fit. If anything, I've just seen them be very opinionated, very vocal about who they are, being very unapologetic, in the sense that it's very like headless. It's like very K2 like. And what I mean by that is they're like a bull in a china shop. You know what I mean? They're just kind of like stumping around, and they may not be as aware of how they're coming across, or even if they are aware of how they're coming across, they just may not care. They don't want to have to adhere to authority. Okay, so I'm not going to get into everything. Let's move on to the Ashvini events that happened last time Rahu was in Ashvini. So last time Rahu was in Ashvini, there was actually a lot of different natural disasters. This was back in 2004. I believe it was around July that Rahu entered Ashvini in 2004. And here are some natural disasters that occurred that year. We had Hurricane Francis, Hurricane Ivan, Tropical Storm Ivan, which I think it was downgraded from Hurricane Ivan, I believe. Hurricane Janine, the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, Mount St. Helens also became active, and that is that's a volcano. And so we may have an increase of natural disasters now that Rahu is in Ashvini, and I should say that Rahu will be in Ashvini until October 30th, 2023. So it's going to be there a lot longer than it was back in 2004. It's kind of a quick transit in 2004. Some other interesting things that happened last time that Rahu was in Ashvini. We had the premiere of PBS Kids, so some programming for children. We also had YouTube go online. Their slogan is always broadcast yourself. Now, the reason I mention these things is because Ashvini can deal with children, or they can come off kind of like childlike because they have that bull in the china shop energy, and children naturally have that same mentality where they're really not even thinking about themselves or others or their environment. They're just kind of like jumping around, doing whatever, completely oblivious to the world around them, and you kind of have to mold them and teach them how to live and to be good people and etc. and things like that. And then YouTube, when it comes about expressing yourself, obviously Ashvini is very individualistic, and so they themselves are kind of like the kings and queens of expression. Probably like Mercury too, Mercury people too, because they're a little bit more intentional about it. Ashvini people aren't necessarily intentional, so you may see a lot of people going viral for some unusual different trends. There may be some new popular program for television. Heck, it could even be for adults, really. But there may be some new program or premiering thing out there for people. There's so many different mediums, I can't even get into them. It could be a new television show on YouTube. It could be a new network. It could be a new website, like, you know, how TikTok came off, or etc. things like that. So something could explode in the realm of entertainment that really has a lasting impact. And it's really going to be about self-expression and putting yourself out there, because that is what Ashvini deals with, and it is a master in that area without even wanting to be a master. Other things that we had going on in 2004 is we had Osama bin Laden threatening the U.S. North Korea also announced that it possessed nuclear weapons. So there's some possibility that there's going to be some hostility between the U.S. and other nations. Probably some nations we already have some tension with, but that's really not that hard to predict, you know, with the war with the Ukraine and Russia. So it would not be surprising if those tensions mounted. It could even get to the point where Russia is very much intentionally blaming the U.S. more, or putting more pressure on the U.S., or even just outright threatening the U.S. I'm not even sure if it'll get to that point, but it is quite a possibility given how things have been in the past. And it doesn't have to necessarily be Russia. It could be some other country. I'm just using Russia because it's the most obvious answer, right? Other good things that happen is that you have the Statue of Liberty reopening and taking more safety precautions. So there could be some more reopening of shops, buildings, some more relaxing of rules. I know with COVID, things were a little bit more strict. And even now, there are some places that still have rules. Like I can still see places that have please wear your mask and things along like that. Luckily, I haven't encountered any places that, you know, check to see if you're vaccinated. So I do see probably more relaxation of rules, especially coming out of COVID. Even though people are still coming down with COVID, I definitely see that there will be more relaxation and more freedoms, which makes sense because Ashvini is a place that is a little bit, there really aren't any rules, okay? There really aren't any restrictions. Like I mentioned before, they kind of go by their own rules. They go by their own boundaries, if there are any, and they just go with what they want to do and what feels natural and what feels instinctual. And it's kind of like this very wild caveman-esque energy. So you can probably see a little bit more wild, wild west energy coming out of this transit. Another interesting thing that happened was the screen painting got stolen. This was also the time in which Martha Stewart went to jail, and also charges against Kobe Bryant were dropped, and these were his assault charges. So there may be some big celebrity news when it comes to crime, or just big crime news in general. Just because when we have this Ashvini-like energy, there is more rule breaking going on. Another thing that I might want to mention is Ashvini can be a placement that is a little bit more, I guess, sexually energized. So you can have a lot more people wanting to hook up in that area. So maybe hookup culture makes some kind of major resurgence, or maybe just another form of hookup culture, or maybe more people are dating and getting out there along the lines of that, just because Ashvini does have that natural inclination, okay, to just get a little bit randy. Just want to mention that. I know in 2005, I believe, there was around 200,000 protesters in New York against President George Bush and his government. So there's definitely going to be more stance and more criticism of the government and policies along that. But we do have that every year. there could be more energy directed towards that, where you could have more people protesting and putting more physical bodies out there, rather than just like making tweets or posts or, you know, YouTube videos like I'm doing. There may be some more people who are willing to organize and wanting to say something and take a stand in that way. As I mentioned before in my Ashvini video, I do see a lot of Ashvini people being very involved in nonprofits, involved in civil rights movement, wanting to make changes. I believe one of the women who helped organize the bus strikes during the civil rights movement, and I'm talking about with Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, she was Ashvini. She was the one, I believe, that kind of like gathered everyone and said, like, it was two people. It was one Ashvini person, and I think the other person might have been Jupiterian. But those two came together and they were like, no, we've got to organize something and put a stop to this after Rosa Parks got arrested. Yeah, they're usually on the forefront of wanting to make major change and innovations. They're one of those people who are like, we need to overhaul the whole thing. We need to get rid of systems. We need to push things down. These are the ones who are going to be a little bit more extreme. They're not willing to play pretty politics or nice politics, or what do you want to call it? What's it called? I can't. Is it plague politics? What's the term for it? Respectability politics. They don't play respectability politics. They just want to create movements. They're like, no, I want to change. I want to make movements. I want to do things now. Okay, so that's very Ashvini like energy, to come in with a lot of aggression and force. So you may feel like a lot of people are giving, and it could be a righteous aggression, it could be a righteous force. So a lot of people may be in that sort of energy and at this time. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I get that out of the way when it comes to what we can expect for this transit. And if we're going into sort of personal things, this can be an increase in bravery in a certain area. Like, for example, if you want to take like more risk and things when it comes to your career, your appearance, your vitality, things along the lines of that. Like, let's say that you had like your sun in Ashvini and Rahu was going over that. Well, that could actually mean a lot of things, but if we're just talking about the major themes of Ashvini, then yeah, this could be a change in your physicality and your physical appearance, but this can also be a change in wanting to take more risk and chances when it comes to your career, and really wanting to make some advances and wanting to do that right away, and wanting to make sure that you are getting ahead. You're like, I'm sick of being stuck. I'm going to push this thing forward. I'm no longer going to hold myself back. I'm going to give this my best shot. So things along the lines of that. And depending on whatever house this is in for you, that's going to be the area you really try to like push yourself in, and like maybe have a lot of sleepless nights because of it. So let's say this is in your 5th house, and you know you want to get out there and dating, and maybe you have a lot of anxiety around dating, and so this could be a lot of sleepless nights because of that. Or maybe it could be the opposite, where you're just very excited and you meet someone new and you have some sleepless nights in that way. It doesn't have to necessarily be dating. 5th house can just represent entertainment and things that you're passionate about. Like what I'm doing right now would be my 5th house, right? That would be like me on YouTube. I'm doing this for my own enjoyment and pleasure. I don't get anything from this other than that. Like, I just like doing this. So it could be an increase of, you know, for me, it might be like an increase of me showing up on camera, or increase of me making videos, increase of me making content, or things along the lines of that, and putting more effort into that area, which would involve a lot of sleepless nights. Like if I wanted to consistently post every day, I would just not be sleeping. So things along the lines of that. So whatever area that you have this transit going in, like let's say it's your 8th house, then that would definitely be a deep dive into research and calculation and thinking about things, as well as some emotional areas that you may have to dive into and really have a sense of bravery about, because Ashvini is a very brave placement. And so maybe there's some areas, some emotional areas inside that you really didn't want to dive into, you really want to have to deal with. But now that you have that 8th house Ashvini transit, you're like, I've got to face this. Like, I've really got to allow myself to be vulnerable and open about this and be honest with myself. Things along the lines of that. So that is what I have for you, and I will see you guys next time. Just wanted to get the vibe and get the pulse of what's going on. I don't know why I did that, but I'm just tired. I'm really tired. It's like almost 11 right now. It is 11. It is 11 right now. So I will see you guys next time. Au revoir.